Daniel from Canada is calling in and has a great question for JL, I think. Daniel, you are live on Truth Wanted. What's up?
Not much. Yeah, I wanted to talk about aliens and stuff, something I want to talk about. Because I recently talked to Forrest. I went on Forrest's show.
Oh.
And I just want a little horror movie trivia I want to talk with J.L. about first.
Shoot, yeah, absolutely. Go for it. What do you got?
J.L., I think one of the greatest horror movies ever made was the Texas Chainsaw Massacre by Tobe Hooper in the 70s. And have you guys ever realized that movie can be seen as an animal rights movie?
Yes, 100%. The imagery depicted in the movie was supposed to parallel that of slaughterhouses. Is what I know about that movie. So I don't know if he's like a vegan, but it could definitely be seen as an animal rights movie. Yeah, that's definitely been wrote about before.
Yeah, to me,
see, it's interesting. It's interesting that you bring this up. It's interesting that you bring up the animal rights notion, and yes, that imagery does lend itself to that. I can tell you, when Tobe Hooper was making that movie back in '73 and '74, when he was down in Texas, and Tobe Hooper was basically, the pre-production on that movie was absolutely insane, and the shoot itself was absolutely brutal. And so in order to convey what was happening on the film, because Tobe didn't have the money to do real extreme, gore effects and extreme blood effects, which is why you don't see a lot of that in the original TCM. Surprisingly, a lack of like goriness or bloodletting for a movie so extreme in its nature. And the reason for that, the slaughterhouse images and the animal everything that you saw in that was in order to ramp up the tension, and because that stuff was easier to get for the production than it was to try and do special effects for special makeup effects. So it was actually an aesthetic choice, or it was an aesthetic choice made for budgetary purposes. The reason why Hooper did that, because he was so strapped for cash when he made that film, because after casting and doing everything. So he's talked about it at length, and I've spoken with him as well back before he passed away about the making of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And from what I've gathered, and I've heard it before, the animal rights kind of like imagery there was something that was kind of tacked on after the fact, and that they just kind of ran with it. But Tobe never intended for that to be the message. It's very, very similar because Tobe, in his own words, equated that to George Romero's Night of the Living Dead being a commentary on racism in the nation. Whereas you have a black protagonist who, at the end, after trying to save everybody's lives and being the most competent person on screen, then gets axed out at the end of the movie, by the incompetent police. So everybody took that as a social commentary, when Romero says that it absolutely wasn't. He wanted it to end on a down ending, and that was the best way to do that. And so, there's these things that can get tacked on to films based upon the things we've seen, based on what's popular in culture right now. And I know that animal rights and vegetarianism, veganism, these are important topics right now. And I know that people have glommed onto that imagery to kind of like push that forward. But I can tell you that Tobe did not intend for that. That was not an aim, but I think was a kind of happy accident.
Okay, well, I've been sufficiently proven wrong on everything. I have definitely read that movie is an allegory for that. I guess the whatever movie trivia fact site I've heard was wrong. So yeah, I've actually never seen the movie myself, and I have just read other people who have said, yeah, that movie is like about this or has this imagery to imply, the imagery in slaughterhouses. So there you go. Absolutely wrong on that for me.
So and I would agree. And I would agree. The imagery is there and it can lend itself to that kind of imagery. But I think it was something that Tobe kind of saw, like people mentioned, and he kind of ran with it. But he himself, that was never the intention. Tobe's work is always focused. If you look at his other films like Toolbox Murders and a number of others, his work always focuses on the outsider being pushed into the outsider becomes the villain. The person who is pushed to the fringes of society then turns around and lashes out at the society. That's always been his focus. It's always been about, because he always envisioned himself as an outsider. Like he was always kind of the odd man out. And so the frustration and the anxiety that caused him, his movies, the stories that he told, were a way to kind of like expel that and kind of like express that in that form and kind of deal with that. So he was always really, really big on, the community that built, and he loved filmmaking because there's no outsiders in filmmaking. When you're on a set, it's all one family, it's one crew. We're all working together for the same goal. And that's why he loved the industry so much. And he was such a staunch supporter of it. And it's why, but his films always focus on his own personal, or a kind of like a breath of his own personal anxieties, which I found really fascinating. He was a really, really interesting guy. It's a shame that he passed so soon, but that he passed so early in his life, but really, really good dude.
All right. Well, there you go. What do you think of that, Daniel?
Well, yeah, I didn't mean to imply that the movie was that Hooper intended that. I just mean that it sort of came like you just said, it sort of came about the way they were filming it and that. But to me, the movie is like a bunch of cows, chickens, and pigs got together and said, how can we convince humans? How can we let them know what we go through on a daily basis, 24/7, 365 days a year, and without, showing the actual footage, which is so gross from factory farms, right? But so how can we make so the movie gives you it's like 90 minutes of what it's like, what animals go through, what these animals go through all the time. And I just think it's brilliant how it can be seen as that. But I think the movie's fantastic. I think it's a fantastic horror film. Dan, you really
totally
should
right.
see it. And
it's brilliant. It's one of the best. Absolutely.
Death of the author still applies here in terms of movie interpretation, right? If that thematically works, then it thematically works, even if it's not author's intention.
Right.
I still think that's a valid understanding of it. Again, I've never actually seen Texas Chainsaw Massacre myself, but from what I've heard, the imagery is, could be equated to slaughterhouses and, stuff that goes on factory farms. Yeah. So yeah, if I don't know, I'd say it's still valid, even if the director didn't intend it that way. But maybe, I don't know. Do you agree, JL?
I could say these happy accidents occur all the time. You make a choice in the moment, and in order to try and shore up something, like you'll be on set, and one day you'll have something completely planned out, and then all of a sudden it just simply doesn't work. Sam Raimi ran into this a lot with the Evil Dead, with the first movie with Evil Dead, is that they had everything planned out, all the makeup effects, all this good, and then they got out there and nothing worked. So it was kind of like, it was just absolute chaos. And then you just roll with that and you kind of figure out where it's going to, and from that, we now have the iconic idea of what a Deadite looks like. Like it's solidified that in the popular culture, when really it's just kind of like everybody took that as Sam Raimi trying to separate himself from like classic zombies from, like Dawn of the Dead and, Night of the Living Dead and Return of the Living Dead. And Sam Raimi was breaking out from that and saying he wanted to create a whole new thing. It's like, no. Like the look of those actors was just a result of the makeup not working in that environment. When they were up there shooting in that cabin, it happens like that. These happy accidents that we can glom onto. It's like, wow, that really ran. And sometimes people will see things in the frame that the director doesn't see, or the actors don't pick up on. It'd be like, and it'll be the way a thing is framed, or the way people are situated, or the blocking that takes place, or something done in the set background. Sometimes your set producer or your art director will come and say, "Ooh, I like the idea of this," and they'll put this in the background, and other people will glom onto it when the director couldn't even be bothered to take notice. It's just set dressing, but it speaks to other people, which is one of the reasons you've touched on. One of the reasons why I love the industry so much. I love visual media because the little things that speak to the audience.
Well, Dan, can I talk about my conversation with Forrest?
I mean, sure. I mean, well, we do want to try to wrap things up here, I think, at this point, if only because we did get to talk about one topic here, and we still have some other callers on the line. So maybe next week, if you want to call in, or at a different time, we can talk about that, because I think we did spend a pretty good portion of our time here. But
sure.
Thank you, Daniel. Really appreciate you calling in. And I'm glad we talked about something else besides aliens this time. Because that's what we usually talk about. But not that I don't like talking about it. It's just, a change of pace is cool too.